Mrs. Bellamont sold twice as many butter cookies as chocolate chip cookies and twice as many chocolate chip cookies as coconut cookies. Each box of 4 cookies was sold for $4.50. 80 chocolate chip cookies were sold and were asked how much would Mrs. Bellamont collect from the sale of all the cookies. Okay, so as always, I read through the question first. What have I noticed so far? What am I alert to? Well, I know that there are 3 kinds of cookies, and I'm going to be drawing a bar for each because we're comparing the number of cookies to each other. Okay, that I've already got that in my mind. But what I've also noticed is, as well as talking about the number of cookies, we also have a value, a money value for these cookies, and that's been given for a set of 4 cookies. And in fact, the question also is asking for this money value. All right, it's the sale. Okay, how much? This is talking about money. So I need to be aware of that. I'm going to be talking about different units. I'm going to be talking about numbers of cookies, but I'm also going to be talking about what they sell for. So I think there's going to be quite a number of steps to this question. That's what I should have thought about. That should have jumped out at me when I read this question. So I need to be quite careful, don't I? All right. So twice as many butter cookies as chocolate chip and twice as many chocolate chip cookies as coconut cookies. Now, I'll show you how I would draw it because now I've noticed that the coconut cookies seems to have the smallest number. So I would usually do this. So this is coconut, and I would draw one bar, make that sort of my basic unit. That represents coconut. The next would come the chocolate chip. Look, I'm trying to be a little bit neater. Right, the next would be the chocolate chip. How do they compare? Well, and I'm here, it's the second bit of information I'm given, but I've said I want to start with these. So twice as many chocolate chip as coconut. So I'm going to do 2 of these bars for the chocolate chip. And then lastly, I have the butter, even though they were mentioned first. And I've got twice as many butter cookies as chocolate chips. So if this is the chocolate chip, okay, this would be, that's 1 of the butter. And this is twice as much as a chocolate chip. But of course, I have to divide this up so that I have equal parts. Now, if you tackled this question already and yours were in a different order, that's fine. Let me show you what would have happened if I started here. So I could have just said, okay, there's twice as many butter cookies as chocolate chip. So I could have started with, let's say, the choc chip and the butter. Okay, and then I would have done, what would I have done? So there's twice as many butter cookies as chocolate chip cookies. So there's the chocolate chip cookies, and I'm doing twice as many butter cookies. All right, so far so good. Then there's twice as many chocolate chip cookies as coconut. So this is my chocolate chip cookies. These are my coconut. There are twice as many choc chip as coconut. And then I would see, my coconut is going to be half the size of my choc chip. So, and if this is a half size, I need to divide all of these into half as well so that all of the parts match. Now it looks a bit different. It looks a bit smaller because I've had this half part at the end, and that I've made that my new part. That's the size of the equal parts. But let's just check, does it contain the same information, even though it looks pretty different? Well, what have we got for chocolate chip? There's 2 parts here, 2 parts here. Butter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and coconut, 1, coconut, 1. Okay, so it looks very different superficially, but it actually captures the same information. So it doesn't matter which way round you drew this, as long as you captured all of the information and captured the relative size of the relationships between the bars. Okay, let's crack on then. Right, we're now told each box of cookies was sold for $4.50. Okay, there's nothing I can do with that at the moment. We're then told 80 chocolate chip cookies were sold. Now remember I said we've got quantity and we've got money. This is all about quantity of cookies. So I need to put this information in, 80 chocolate chip cookies. So that means that this whole thing, let's make that a different color, so that this whole thing here, these 2 parts, has a value of 80. Okay, and that means if 80, I've got 2 parts here. If I divide 80 by 2, I of course get 40, and I have now a value for each of these parts. So this is 40 and 40, and if these are, so are these. I don't know why that's done that. There we go. There we go. Much better. There we go. So all of these have a value or represent 40 cookies. Let's be clear. All right, 40 cookies in each of these parts. So what can I do here? Well, what do I need to know? It says, how much would Mrs. Bellamont collect from the sale of all of the cookies? So I need to know how many cookies there are. All right, so this is the all of the cookies. Well, how many of them are there altogether? Okay, well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units, or 7 parts, or 7 units. Okay, so I need to multiply 40 by 7. Okay, so we've got 40 times 7. Okay, now some of you might find that a bit daunting. It's really easy. You don't need to do a written calculation for this if you know your times tables. And how come? Well, 40, remember 40 is the same as 40 is the same as 4 times 10. Okay, and you probably know that 4 times 7 is 28. So 4 times 10 times 7 is 28 times 10, which is 280. And you need to start thinking about those sorts of things, noticing these sorts of things to make working things out much easier whenever you notice these times tables that you probably know off by heart already. So there are 280 what? What are there? Well, because you have to think, what have I just calculated? Cookies, all right, in total. Okay, that's all of the cookies. All right, I think we're getting somewhere. Let's go back and figure out what we're supposed to do with this. We want to know how much Mrs. Bellamont's going to make. Well, what are we told about that? That each box of 4 cookies was sold for $4.50. So we need to know how many sets of 4 or boxes of 4 cookies we could make out of 280 cookies, and then we can multiply that by this money amount. So we need to do 280. We need to divide that by 4. Now, what do you think? Do you notice anything? You've just done a calculation up here. Can you see any similar numbers? What do you think the answer is going to be? Okay, so you've got to start thinking like this. Well, it's going to be 70. All right, 280 divided by 4. All right, 28 divided by 4 is 7. So 280, which is 28 times 10, divided by 4 is 7 times 10. Okay, so there are 70 what? There are 70 boxes of 4 cookies. Okay, now what do we need to do? We need to multiply 70. We need to type 70 times the amount that each of those boxes is going to be sold for. Now, what's going on here? Well, we have this scary decimal. All right, don't worry about it. Decimals are no harder than any other kinds of numbers to deal with. You just have to keep track of what you are doing. But you could also think of it as, if we're thinking of 70, remember up here we thought of 40 as 4 times 10. Well, let's think of 70 as 7 times 10. So we've got 7 times 10, okay, times, I'm going to just ignore the dollar sign for the moment, just to be clear, 4.5, let's say, we'll call it like that, 450, okay. It doesn't matter in which order we do these multiplications, all right? And so we could multiply the 450 by 10. And so we could say that this is 7 times, and what do we do when we multiply this by 10? We're going to move we're moving the numbers up the place value system, and we often think about that as moving the decimal point one way this way. So this is the same as 7 times 45, which might be an easier way for you to think about it. Okay, but let's put this dollar sign back in so we don't forget it. And 7 times 45, or 70 times $4.50, is going to give us a total of, drum roll, 315. Okay, that is our final answer. Okay, so lots of things to think about. Just make sure that you read your question carefully and keep checking and pay attention. Notice when you read a question like this that you might have a dollar amount here but quantities elsewhere.